Hello everybody to lesson 29 of JavaScript for Active Design course. In this lesson we will know some 10 advices, okay, which is some of the most best coding styles that you could use to make your code at the best way. So let's go to the code and see. The first element is the variables. The variables should not be all of it capitals or smalls. If you have, for example, a variable contains of 2 words, you should write it in camel case. For example, first name. This is a variable with camel case styling. Means it has the first element, the first word contains of small words, okay? The next word contains of large, which is capital. Great. The next is if you have, for example, a word and you need this word, it's a variable, and this variable starts, for example, with $sign. It contains only with one word, and it's var, for example, 1. Okay, so in this case it's not recommended to start with a sign $, which is allowed here, but it's recommended that you start the variable with letter. Great. This is about the first advice. The next is the space around the operators. Imagine that I have, for example, var1 equal 22 plus 988. Great. So this is true. It's not false. And even if this the name, if you bought it all of it capital, it would be true, no problem. But here in the variable, in the next, it's recommended that you have a space around the operator. So here around the equal, there should be space. Around the plus, there should be recommended to have a space over there. The advice number 3 is code indentation. Okay, so always use 2 spaces for indentation of code blocks. For example, imagine here I have, for example, function. This function I will call it, for example, function 1. Great. So it's recommended that when you start, it's by the way, if you have a good editor, he will put these things except this the name by itself like this. So sometimes you need to start start from the beginning, from here, from the same line of the function and the closing block. So it's not recommended to start from the for example, if I returned here, say return 0, it's not recommended to start from the same way of the function word and the bracket like here. It's recommended to start from 1, 2, from 2 spaces, so that it could be organized and easy to readable. If you have programmed with Python, you will know how to create the indentation and how it is important. The next is about the statement rules. General rules for simple statements. First of all, always end a simple statement with a semicolon. So any statement you have it, you should end that statement with a semicolon, like here and here. Okay, if we remove, for example, the last one, nothing will be, everything will be great. But it's not recommended to let not putting the semicolon. The second is put the opening bracket at the end of the first line. Okay, so for example, if we have here, for example, function, and in this function I have, as we said, function 1. Great. And it's recommended that you put this parenthesis in the same line, the first line here. So it's don't put it in the second, put it in the first. It's one of the recommended. Second, use 1 space before the opening bracket. As we said before, the editor do this instead of you. So instead of writing like this, and then you need to make space here and put this in the same line, and put some spaces around the operators. The code editor is do this instead of you. So put these brackets in the same line and put space before the bracket and before the parentheses. Also, put the closing bracket on a new line without ending spaces. So this one, if you have ended, for example, your code here, don't put the closing over here. It's not recommended. It's hard to read, and to know where is the closing tag, but put it in a new line so it could be easy to read. Also, don't end a complex statement with a semicolon. For example, here a function is a complex statement. For example, I have finished, and I'll end it with semicolon. No, this is wrong. It's not correct. So the function does not end with a semicolon. The next, which is the the object roles, which is number 4, I think. Object roles means place. You know the object, how we create it. It's like the array, and we have inside the object many elements. For example, I will create an object now just to refresh your memory. I will say var, and I will say object. Let's name it object item. Okay, equal. Then here I will write, for example, this, and I will say first name, and I'll write here Ali, for example. Last name. Look at the, notice that the variable names is camel cases. Last name, and I'll write here Jason. Okay. Age, for example, or whatever you have. For example, age, and I write here 26, 29, 22, nothing. No problem. Great. So now we have this object. So there is some notice. First of all, place the opening bracket on the same line as the object name. So put it in the same line. The second, use colon plus 1 space between each property and its value. So first we will put these brackets in the same line. The next is we will have here, for example, a space between each property of its value, between the property and the value. So here should be space, and here should be space too. So this is more readable and more organized. Use quotes around string values, not around numeric values. Also, like we have did here. Also, don't add a comma after the last property. So why we add comma? We add comma only to separate between elements. Here, last element we have no element, so no need for the comma. Also, place the closing bracket on a new line without leaving space. It's like this. Okay, so it's recommended to add like this, or to put it if it is small, leave it in the same line. But if there is a lot of lines of elements, put it in a new line without any spaces. Okay, always and an object definition with a semicolon, like we have did. So we end it with semicolon. We put the closing bracket in the same line if they are little. If they are a lot, we put it in the new line. We put spaces between the colon and its property and value. We don't add a colon at the end. Also, we start the parentheses, the first bracket we started with in the same line. Also, we start after the equal, we start with space, so that it's recommended. This means if you haven't do this, it will not your code will not be broken. It will work perfect, but it's recommended for the programmer who will come after you to organize and know what you have. The second, which is number 5, I think, the length or the line length should be smaller than 80 or 100. Okay, so for example here, if we calculate how many letters over here we have, if they are 80, we should go new line. Great, so that it could be readable for the user who will come after us, and he will not miss his time trying to know what we have written and following the line which is long. So if you have, for example, arrived to the middle of the editor, go new line. So it's recommended between 18 or 100 letters. Great. So to keep it, readable for the user. The next, which is naming conventions. We have three naming types as we have learned. We have camel case, camel case, and Pascal case, and we have underscores. The underscores, we know what we write the name, and we write inside the name underscore. Okay. The camel case, we have upper camel case and lower camel case. Upper camel case means every word should start with capital. Great. Lower camel case means only the second word, and the third means the first word should start with small letters, and the second should start with the first letter of the second word should start with capital letters. Also, we have Pascal case, which is often performed by C programming language, which means hyphen, to have a hyphen between the two words, which is not recommended here, because it's not allowed, by the way, because it's reserved for the JavaScript. The last point of JavaScript styling advice, it would be the performance. Coding conventions are not used by computers. Most rules have a little impact on the execution of programs. So the indentation, the extra spaces, the new line, these things don't affect the performance if the program or the script is small. So if you have a small script, use this these styling types. But if you have a large production, for example, contains of 12,000 or 100,000 lines, it's recommended to put it in a production script, which means you will remove the new lines, the spaces, so that you could increase the performance. But if the script is small, no need to remove them, because they will not take a big amount of space and a big amount of performing. Great. So this was the lesson of today. Let's review the thing we have learned quickly. So the first element which we have talked about is the variable names, which should be a camel case. Second is space around the operator, so you should write spaces between the operator from each side. Second is the code indentation. You should have an indentation for each element. For the complex, like the function, the element inside the function should be indented. The second is the statement rules, which the statement should end with semicolon. Also, we should put the opening brackets before in the same line. We should have a space between the bracket and the definition of the, for example, the function. Also, we, for example, use the spaces before the closing brackets. Before the brackets, the closing bracket should be in the new line, and we don't complete the statement, the complex statement like the function, with semicolon. The second, which is the object roles, which we will open the it's the same like the complex elements, which we put the brackets in the same line. We put space between the equal and the brackets, like here. We also put spaces between the colon and after the colon. We also put semicolon at the end. Try if there is a lot of codes or lines, we write the bracket in the new line. If there is a little bit of code, means one line, we put it in the same line. Also, we have learned the length of line should be 80 or 90 or 100, no more. Okay, so it's recommended for readable, so the human could read it easily. Also, naming the conventions means we will use one way for all of our codes, whether uppercase, lowercase, or hyphens or camel case. So we will use only one type. So don't name your variables, for example, last name with camel case, upper camel case, and then with lower camel case and with hyphens, and it's not recommended. Use only one way and go ahead with it. The last one is performance, means if you have a large files contains of 100,000 lines or 12,000 lines, or I mean tens of thousand lines, you should remove these spaces. And I mean, there's a way that could produce a file for production mode, so it could, I mean, close the codes to each other, so it could be more performing and faster performing. But if the code is small, keep it like what we have did here. The spaces will not affect the performance. The lesson is to end. So thanks for listening and watching, and see you on the next. Bye for now.